Okay, well, thank you all. Large audience today. Thank you guys for coming. My name is Jennifer Richmeyer. I am the Marketing Director and Community Service Representative for Home Instead Senior Care, but I'm also a clinical social worker. So, and just a little background on Home Instead. It is both a locally owned as well as worldwide company. So, the history of Home Instead, it was founded in Omaha, Nebraska, 24 years ago by a couple, Paul and Lori Hogan, who at the time, one of their mothers was aging, and they decided they did not want to send her to an assisted living or an independent living or a rehab. So they created the company Home Instead, and with the concept and the idea that their mom would age in place. And so that idea kind of took off, and franchises are now, it is a franchise company, so kind of, if you think of it like a Dunkin' Donuts, but each individual franchise is, managed by different owners. So, you get good, bad, everything in between of how they're managed and operated. But the owners of our franchise have been in New England for 21 years. This is our 21st anniversary. It was back in March. And we are owned by Bruce Bender, who is a pathologist, and Lori Bender, who is a clinical psychiatric nurse. Actually, all of the bios of our team are in here on this sheet. You will see. So on the back is me and Lori, down near the bottom, but you can read about their bio. So 21 years in business, and they all, despite the fact that home care is a non-medical service, there are a lot of medical staff on our team. Bruce and Lori sort of start that from the top. So, and we're based out of Northborough. That's where all the team members sit. That's where our offices are. And we also have a satellite office in Natick. But our territory encompasses 60 towns. So I travel in a day anywhere from Worcester all the way to Needham, Dedham area. So the 60 towns in between Worcester and Needham is the two territories owned by the Benders. Okay, so a little bit about me. I am originally from Michigan. You can see that down here. I'm from the center of the state in a town called Okemos. Born and raised there. I moved out to Massachusetts when I started I joined AmeriCorps after I finished undergrad back in 2005. So I did AmeriCorps, which is similar to the Peace Corps, out in Western Mass. My husband and I now reside in Framingham. We have 2 pets. We have a cat and a dog. And as you'll see from the second bullet point, former clinical social worker, I did spend a large majority of my career working with children and families, and so I've recently moved working with that population of folks to more of the geriatric senior side. I joined Home Instead last March, so it's been a year and a couple of months as a marketing director after watching my grandmother's experience of going through home care, and we really welcomed her caregiver into the family, and it went really well for most of it. I'll talk about it a little bit later, but my grandma is from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, so it's a tiny little town called Big Bay. It's the middle of nowhere. There's 500 people in town, and there weren't franchises like Home Instead up there because it was very rural, so there was more freelance caregiving going on, like friends, people in town that sort of did it on the side. They would take care of folks, and so we did not work with Home Instead. We worked with a freelance caregiver that helped my grandma stay at home until she was 99. She'll be 102 in February. Still going. So what is home care? Are you guys familiar with what home care is already? Am I preaching to a crowd, preaching to the choir? Do you guys know what the basic level of services are?
No, he said not much.
What'd you say?
No, he said it. I'm not familiar with it.
You're not? Okay, not at all? Okay, a little bit. So, like I said, we are not a medical model. We are not allowed to administer medications or assist with wound care, anything like that. That would be a visiting nurse. However, what we provide is something called companionship and personal care. And in your folder, there is a brochure with a full list of services on the front and back. So our model is based on the relationship of the client with the caregiver. So we want that relationship to be as well matched as possible, because that inevitably leads to a long-term health and wellness of the client, whether someone's struggling with depression or Alzheimer's or maybe just isolation because their spouse passed away. That relationship our caregiver has with the client is paramount, and that's what we focus on most. So matching on personality, the skill abilities of the caregiver, and what works for the client-caregiver relationship. So whether it's someone needs assistance going to medical appointments, or cooking meals in the home, or doing laundry, light housekeeping, arts and crafts, working on a scrapbook. A lot of our caregivers stay with our clients for years on end. We've had clients, or caregivers with clients for, I think, like 10 plus years. So it's a relationship that we want to sort of start before things get too bad and stay with them throughout the process. And although we are called Home Instead, and the model was developed on the fact that we try to help people age in place, we can go wherever someone's home is. So if you are at home, we can come to your residence. If you live in an independent or assisted living or 55, 62 plus community, we can go there. We can go to a skilled nursing facility and hospice facility. We've had quite a few clients lately that need additional caregiving services bedside who are on hospice, so we can stay with you all the way till the end.
I thought hospice took care of all that.
It does. I mean, there is a certain allotment that Medicare pays for as far as how many hours you get, but sometimes it's not enough for people, especially if like the close family members are maybe far away and they can't get here in time. So if they only, they need more care in addition to what Medicare is paying, then they'll hire us on as well. And someone who might be struggling with like Alzheimer's or dementia might have more problematic behaviors, so they might need more attention. So yeah, we stay with clients all the way through to the end. Any questions on that?
So
Yeah.
Medicare pays for
A certain amount of hospice services.
hospice,
Correct.
but it doesn't pay for home care.
Correct. Yeah. Home care is a private, good point, private pay relationship. So you either can pay through long-term care insurance if you have it, or through out-of-pocket. Veterans benefits obviously work as well. But yeah, it's private pay. Yeah.
Do you have anything about amounts? Can I go find that online, or can you tell us?
I'll tell you, yeah, it's $27 an hour for companionship. That's transportation, errands, light housekeeping, doing arts and crafts, and then personal care. We do train our caregivers how to assist with bathing, grooming, toileting, and that's $29 an hour. So as one declines in their health and their age, all of us will eventually need assistance, whether we want to admit it or not, bathing, getting dressed in the morning, being moved on and off a toilet. So that's $29 an hour. Yeah.
Just have an idea.
No, it's okay. And it's 65 cents a mile for transportation.
Yep.
So if,
That's for transportation, it's not for coming to the house.
no. That's if you're with the client and the client wants to go to Dunkin' Donuts or a medical appointment, then we charge 65 cents a mile.
Yeah.
Or to go visit a friend or go to a community event. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, 65 cents a mile additional. And our caregivers can drive either their car or your car. Any other questions on that?
What about the car insurance? What happens in the event of an accident?
We're covered. So because, and this is where, I'll get into this a little bit later, but this is the difference between sort of hiring a freelance caregiver and working with an agency. We carry liability insurance. I think it's up to $1 million, $1 million or $2 million. All of our caregivers, I'm going to talk about this a little bit later too, go through a screening and vetting process. So I think, actually, that might be the next slide. Hold on. Oh, nope. This is just a reminder of some of our services. Let's see. Okay, so this will get into what you just asked. So how do I know which home care agency to choose? Remind me your name again? Joanne asked me when we were talking, are there other home care agencies? And I said, yes, there's hundreds. And unfortunately, it's actually a non-regulated market or non-regulated industry. So technically, someone could own a bakery or a pizza shop one day, and if they wanted to, open up a home instead senior care or a Joe's Senior Care franchise the next day. So you don't have to come from a medical in the state of Massachusetts, it's unregulated. So you don't have to have a medical background, you don't have to have any sort of training in it. You could open up a mom and pop shop, which is, it is what it is, but sometimes it helps to have the educational background and experience behind what agency you're choosing to go with. So, but if you wanted to, like I said, you could own a pizza franchise one day and maybe it was not going, or a pizza shop and it wasn't going so well and you decide, oh, I want to get into home care. Technically in the state of Massachusetts, you could do that. So that's the scary part. Yeah, I say that not to scare people, but to make you, that's why I did this presentation, to make you aware of what to look for when you're choosing one. Yeah. So, I know this is, can everyone see this? Hopefully. These are the questions I particularly think you should ask. And I developed these questions in this presentation based off of my personal experience with my grandmother, which I'll get into a little bit more. But I thought these were personally good questions to ask when you're choosing, you know, even if you're thinking about, you know, picking out a college for your child. It's kind of like the same experience, or like picking out what company to work for. Same type of thing, like how long has the agency been around for? How many years in business? This is our 21st year. We were the first franchise in New England. Are the caregivers W-2 employees of the agency, meaning that they're bonded, insured, that we have liability insurance, which we do, all of the above. They're not any contracted employees. How are the agency's caregivers screened and vetted? Do they do drug testing? So for our caregivers, they have to get a physical, they have to have a TB test, they have to go to an urgent care center to do a drug screen. We don't, even though in the state of Massachusetts, marijuana is supposedly okay now, it's none of our caregivers, it cannot be in their blood system, or in their blood in order for them to be hired. So we spend a lot of money on vetting people, but we also want to make sure that it in turn develops the reputation and quality of, you know, the caregiver that we put out. Yes?
That made me think of a question.
Yeah.
I have a marijuana card because of cancer, and I know that I can designate somebody to help with it. For example, to go shopping for it.
Yeah.
Would any of the people that's working for your company be willing to do something like that?
What was it called? A what card?
To designate somebody to help me, basically to be able to do everything I can do with a marijuana card. Go to the dispensary and get whatever medicine, whatever.
Oh, a marijuana card.
Would
Sorry.
Would anybody, or is that not? It's just because you said that I thought about it.
I don't know. Let me find out. That's a really good question, because this has been on my mind too.
Yeah, it's
Because in Michigan,
just
marijuana.
in general, it's good to know because.
Yeah, I will find out. That's a great question. And the first time I've had it, I will ask my manager. Because I know it is legal now in the state, and people can grow plants in their home if they want to. Yeah, I will email Suzanne the answer if that's okay. Yeah.
Thank you. And in the end, I assume you take our email addresses.
Yeah, I can take yours and email you personally if
I
you want.
love that.
Okay,
Thank you.
really good
That's
question.
easy.
Yeah. It's a whole nother topic. So are the caregivers trained on Alzheimer's and dementia? Does the agency pay to train their caregivers? Not every home care company can. Like I said, some might just be starting up. They might have a small or lean staff. They might not be able to actually train their caregivers. Some of them, scarily enough, just sign the paper and send you into the home without really giving you any sort of background information about the client, what their likes, dislikes, you know, how to work with these behaviors. So does the agency train their caregivers on how to look for these behaviors and know what's going on? That, I think, is really important. Are caregivers trained on delivering personal care services? Because, like I said, at some point, all of us are going to need help with getting a bath, transfers on and off the toilet. We have 2 nurses on staff, Ann and Deb, and Ann does all of our training of the caregivers on personal care. They have to go through, I think it's 16 hours of training with her on how to properly make a bed so that there are no bed sores, how to make sure it's folded and all the corners are creased properly, how to give someone a sponge bath and properly transfer in and out of bed, on and off a toilet without hurting yourself. Yeah, so there are right and wrong ways to do it. Just keep that in mind. What's the longevity of the agency's administrative staff? So if you see, and don't be shy about asking these questions. Like, you have to be your own advocate because no one's gonna come out and tell you. And you could just see a sign, Jennifer's Home Care, and you have no idea, did I open it yesterday? Did I open it 20 years ago? How long have my staff members been there? And like any company, it's kind of a good sign of like, how well do they take care of their staff members if they've been there a long time. You'll see on our brochure that or on this flyer, this is all of our administrative team. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, sorry, I'm out of breath, 5, 6. I think there's 6 people that have been at home at this particular franchise for 15 plus years. And today, that's a long time. So 15 plus years of the same team members working.
And what about the caregivers? How long do they generally stay?
Good question. Some stay a year, and like maybe it's a college student who's home some stay for the summer, they're home for the summer and they just want to do some side jobs. Some stay for a year or two, but then I would say 50% of our caregivers are people who retired from professional careers and kind of got bored and wanted to do something else, and they've been with us like 5, 10, 12, 13 years. So it's typically the people who retired and then came out of retirement that stay with us the longest. But yeah, we have a lot of caregivers that are 60 plus, a lot. So
that also means that if somebody needs a caregiver, depending on how long you need the caregiver, it might be the same, you might go through 10 people.
you might go through what?
10 people, I just picked a number.
No, not necessarily, unless you're needing like 24/7 care.
Oh, well,
But we usually, typically, like once you're paired with somebody, we keep you with them as long as possible. We don't change them in and out, no. Unless you're 24/7, then you probably have 3 or 4 caregivers on 8-hour rotating shifts.
Yeah.
But we try to keep the same caregiver with the client as long as possible, so long as the relationship's working. If it's not working and you tell us, I don't really like them, that's fine. We do the best we can, but let us know and then we'll pair you with somebody else. But we obviously try to keep them, if it's working great, we keep them there as long as possible. And we don't, change them in and out. That's another good question. And you want to ask who's doing the initial assessment in the home? Is it somebody who, like I said, owned a pizza shop yesterday and is like trying to figure this whole thing out, or is it someone that has experience and knows what to look for? So there's 2 nurses, like I mentioned, Ann and Deb. They're the 3rd and 4th people down on this flyer. Ann's blonde, Deb is brunette. And they do all of our assessments, whether it's personal care or companion care, so that they can have sort of an eye on the situation. And if we get a call and they say that there's no medical concerns, it's still important to get that history, even though they say, I just want companionship services, I just want companionship. If you know a little bit more about the client and what's actually going on physically with them, you can foresee potential, dangers or pitfalls that might come along with them in the future. So Ann and Deb do all of the assessments. They meet everyone in the home, and assessments usually an hour, hour and a half. They ask you all your medications. They ask you, where you like to go shopping. What's your favorite who's your favorite doctor, your primary care physician, everything. So it's a lengthy assessment, and we typically ask either a spouse or a child to be there with you to gather as much information as possible. So it's really comprehensive. It's not just in and out. So, but yes, it's done by 2 nurses on staff. Who oversees the work of the caregivers? Are they being supervised? This is I think one of the most important questions because it is an industry of a lot of trust, and you're in someone's home, there's potential for things to go wrong, theft, abuse, neglect, whatever. Stuff that we hear about in the news that goes on in this industry, whether it's in nursing homes or homes themselves. So you want to make sure that there is some form of oversight. So we have a client log journal that I forgot to bring, but we document every time a caregiver goes into the home. They're required to document exactly what they did, and that client log journal stays by the bedside or in an open space, so that when family members come in or other nurses or somebody else can see what exactly is going on in the home. And the nurses and the client care managers oversee all of the communication between the client, the caregiver, the families. So we have the 2 nurses, and then there's 3 client care managers. So there's 5 people, a team that's kind of in the mix of assessing what's going on in the home, making sure there is no theft, abuse, neglect, whatever. Because in this industry, that's the scary stuff that we hear about. So a lot of oversight from staff. Does that make sense? Yes, okay. And they are right below the nurses, the 3 client care managers. That's Amanda, Margie, and Kathy. And then the last question is, who owns a home care agency? Do they have a medical or clinical background? Like I said, it's not necessary in this industry because we are technically non-medical. However, it does help tremendously if you have people with clinical or medical experience. If you can own a home care agency, you don't have to have a nurse on staff. You don't have to have a social worker on staff. But we do, and we're owned by a pathologist and a clinical psychiatric nurse. I always get it wrong. But it's just a bonus. Any questions about this? And like I said, don't be bashful. Like if you're making a call or your child is making a call for you or you're making a call for a spouse, like have this out and like don't be bashful about asking this of whoever picks up the phone, because they know that you have done your research and that you are vetting them, and they should be able to answer those questions. If they can't answer the questions, then just be cautious. Or if you feel like they're not giving you an honest answer. Like, you have to be a good advocate for yourself and ask a lot of questions.
So all of this is what we have.
It is. I know it's small print, but it's on the second page at the very bottom, important questions to ask. And there's a magnifier in your packet that you can pull out. It looks like a credit card. Yeah. So I know it's small, sorry. But you can pull that out, and those are the questions you should ask, yeah. Yeah, you can stick it in your purse, like menus or books.
Good idea.
Yeah. But this is another sheet that's helpful too, that has bigger print, that says caregivers are not all the same. This asks basically the same questions that I'm talking about. This was printed off of our corporate website, but these are, good comparisons to make. Yes?
There's no housekeeping.
Yep, there is. Light. It's not like, we can't come in and do a full, but yes, absolutely. We can help with vacuuming, dishes, laundry, dusting. It's light housekeeping, absolutely. No mowing of the grass, no shoveling, yeah. But absolutely.
No shopping?
No shoveling
Oh,
for snow. But yes, definitely light housekeeping, yeah. Any other questions about this? This is like the most important slide, in my opinion, based on my personal experience.
oh, okay.
So this coincides with the previous slide and talks about, why not hire a neighbor or your friend? Like you know them, you've lived next to them for 40 years, you trust them, hopefully, This is where my personal experience comes into play. So because my grandmother lives in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and it's a tiny town of 500, we had to find a woman who came recommended from other people in town. I'll say her name because no one will ever meet or see her, but her name is Renata. She was wonderful. She probably cared for my grandmother for 5 or 6 years. It was like a mother-daughter relationship because my brother and I live out here on the East Coast. My parents live in Lower Michigan. So we didn't have a choice, and she wanted to die at home. So she lives on a lake in a beautiful little cottage, so it's where she wanted to die. So she keeps living. She's now, like I said, 101. So we have Renata in the home for 5 years. They built this great relationship, and then my grandma eventually has one final bad fall, and my dad's like, we really need to put her in assisted living now before she breaks a hip or something that's really awful and she can't recover from. So now she's in assisted living, and then once we did that, Renata had asked my dad if she could start living in my grandma's home, because she didn't have, she had like a modular home and didn't have a ton of money, which is fine, but my dad felt bad because he knew that they were like closely bonded, so he said, sure, Renata, you can live in the home for a little bit until you get, I think she had plumbing issues or something with her modular home. So she stayed in the home for a couple of months. She had 4 dogs, like really shedding dogs, which were adorable, but they were very large. And eventually just continued to ask to stay rent-free. And so because my dad's a good guy and like felt bad because he knew that she took such good care of his mom, he kept saying yes. And I was like, Dad, like, you need to either charge her rent or like if the dogs are destroying the house, like we're gonna pay for this. So he eventually kicked her out, but that right there is like a major boundary violation. Like at the end of like a home care, like you will never ever get that with home instead because there's boundaries and like liability. But when you go with like the freelance route or your neighbor, you're open to theft and you're open to boundaries being crossed. And I've just had 2 bad experiences with both my grandparents. My other grandma had her wedding ring stolen that I was supposed to get when she was in hospice. So so it's just, and we still love Renata, and we're an understanding family, and we knew she needed money. So we let her stay for a little bit. I mean, she's out of the house now, but it's just, these are things that I think if my dad knew a little bit more about it, could have been avoided, because he was making all the planning for his mom. And then, like I said, my other grandma had her wedding ring stolen from hospice. So there's all these things that can happen. Most importantly, I think theft and boundary violations are the 2 most common. Abuse and neglect too. If there's no oversight by like a team or an agency, that's huge too. So you don't get that when not to say you should never hire a neighbor or somebody off of a website, but there's just certain things that you get what you pay for. That's why we charge $27 and $29 an hour, because we carry insurance and we have eyes on every situation. Does that make sense? Sorry, I get emotional when I talk about that. But there's just things that can go wrong that can be avoided. This is my grandma, Lillian. So we had her 100th birthday up in Big Bay 2 years ago? No, a year and a half ago. It's my brother. Yeah, like I said, she'll be 102 on February 13th. So this is my dad and his brother, Eric, my grandma. This was at her 100th birthday. But she's still going. She's still, she's at an assisted living. We don't have Renata working with her anymore. But yeah, that's a personal experience, kind of about why I got into this position in this industry. So when does home care make sense? There's, all different times in the spectrum of aging that it can make sense, but you kind of want to do it before it becomes a crisis. Because when you're in a crisis, no one can think straight. You have no time to research what you're doing. You're just like, actually yesterday someone posted on Facebook, I live in Framingham, and someone posted on the Framingham Family Network, does anyone know a good home care agency in the area? And I made a comment, and I was like, well, Home Instead's good, but I'm a little biased because I work there. And then there was a whole slew of comments on Facebook about people recommending other home care companies, which is great. It's good to get recommendations, but she was in a crisis because her brother was dying and was on hospice. So she had to look it up really quick. Had she maybe been proactive and done her education and a little bit of research, she might have known. But it was a situation where her brother was dying and she needed immediate recommendations. So do it before the crisis hits. Like, plan for yourself. Like, tell your children or your spouse, like, I want Home Instead, or I want Jennifer's Home Care. Like, if you plan it yourself, it just goes a lot more smoothly. And like, these are the reasons why. So avoid the crisis. Plan ahead. If someone is recently diagnosed with a major illness like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, like, think about how the progression of that disease is going to look, and when will there be a time when they can no longer care for themselves. Try to, like I said, plan ahead and nip it in the butt so that you don't have to last minute sort of go into panic mode. We're a really good we're a really good resource for family members who need respite. So in addition to both my grandmother's sad stories, my dad has also been the primary caregiver for my mom my entire life. So she's had a mental illness for like 40 years of her life. And so my dad has always been the caregiver, but he never took respite, ever. So I've seen my dad firsthand burn out, which leads to anger, resentment. When you take on so much and you're the primary caregiver for your spouse, as some of you may or may not know, it's a lot. So use a home care company as respite. Like, give yourself a break. Maybe you just need 3 hours to go out to, go to the mall, or my dad's into cars. He likes car shows, but I think he always felt a compulsion to, make sure my mom was taken care of, and he was always there, and he's burned out. He is. He recovers sometimes, but I wish that he would have, been a little bit more proactive and said, I need 3 hours to myself as opposed to trying to do everything. And then we're also a really good resource for someone who is recovering from surgery or coming out of rehab. Maybe you just had a new hip or a new knee and you need a little bit additional support in the home to do the things you normally can't do, like cook meals, go grocery shopping, do the laundry. We're a good resource for that too. So we do both short-term caregiving as well as years on end. It kind of just depends on what the situation is. Any questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't do the questions.
That's okay.
But as we talk, something else comes up. If you need somebody yesterday or today, immediately,
Right.
what are the chances of getting somebody to come in? How?
So if you call
So
today,
if I call today and said, oh, I need help tomorrow, right?
good question, perfect question. So if you leave this and you call right away, you will get Joanne or Angela will probably answer, and they would set up an assessment. What time is it? They could maybe still do today, depending what our nurses are doing. Maybe they might already be out doing assessments, but if they're not, you'll probably get an assessment tomorrow. So usually within 24 hours.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, you'll get the initial
Yeah.
assessment,
Oh,
yeah.
that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, usually within 24 hours, or if not, a few hours. Yeah,
Good.
very quick. And if it's not, well, Anne's on vacation this week, so that's the only reason it might be delayed a couple of days, but typically 24 hours. Any other questions about when home care is a good idea? No? Okay. This kind of actually relates to your question about when to start the process. You can, like I said, ask whatever agency you choose. It doesn't have to be home instead. All the questions that I suggested. Is the assessment done by a nurse? Is it free or does it cost? Our personal care assessments do cost $60. If we go and do the assessment and find that it's actually not a personal care assessment, then it'll probably be free of charge. We already talked about the nurse coming out and interviewing the client as well as a spouse or a family member. And then after the assessment, the nurse comes back to the home care agency and discusses it with the client care managers to see who would be best suited for this particular client based on personality, needs, skill level, all that. And if it doesn't work, it happens. I mean, we sometimes pair a caregiver with a client and they just don't get along. We're not perfect, so, but call us and we will make a change. Don't be shy and just be like, oh, I hate when Sarah comes. But sometimes personalities don't always get along, and just call us and we'll switch. Yeah, and like you said, care services begin as soon as possible after the assessment's done. We also do 3 and 6 month wellness checks. Though I do those as well sometimes when we're busy. I've been doing them lately, but our nurses will also come around every 3 to 6 months depending on your needs to see how you're doing. Like, have you declined? Have you improved? Do we need to change something? Do we need less care, more care? We don't want to give you anything that you don't need, and we're not going to like oversell you. So, but there's a lot of oversight by our nurses. Any questions on that? Sorry, I'm out of breath. Oh, questions. So, yeah, what questions do you guys have? Don't be shy. Like, if I have the answer, I'll educate you, and if I don't, I'll email you or find it. But ask questions.
We're recently seeing people who need 24-hour day care, so what would be the cost for that?
For 24-hour care? The hour amount gets, like the 27 or 29 gets reduced a little bit because it's more. I'll email you a rate card.
Okay.
I don't think I have a rate card in here. But it's not quite as much as the 27 or 29. It's going to be expensive, but we have a lot of clients that are 24/7. It happens. Oh, yeah.
Do they get billed monthly? Or is it a
I
week?
think it's every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks?
Because I get paid every 2 weeks. I think it's every 2 weeks, I think. What was I going to say? Oh, there is a 3-hour minimum. So say you don't feel like you need a lot of care, and totally fine. There is a 3-hour block of care per week. So if you need we could send a caregiver every Wednesday for 3 hours. That's at least the minimum. And we go up to 24/7. We do not do live-in care. Our belief at Home Instead is that live-in care leads to burnout, and it does not allow for a system of checks and balances. There will be home care agencies that provide, do you guys know what I mean when I say live-in? Someone will live in your home with you, so we don't practice that. We have 8-hour rotating shifts, so there is no burnout, and there's a system of checks and balances. So, yeah.
Do you work on weekends?
Me or the care?
No, the.
Oh, yeah, all the 24/7. And if someone We have some clients who wander or wake up during the night. We'll do night shifts. We have caregivers that just, maybe there's two spouses in the home and one, is struggling with wandering or Alzheimer's or dementia, and the other spouse is not getting a good night's sleep. We'll sometimes have a caregiver in there just from like 11 p.m. to, 8 hours, 7 a.m., just to cover the night shift so that the spouse can get a good night's rest. So, yeah, we do anything and everything pretty much, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, can you take us through the process?
Yeah.
First would be, if you're in hospital,
Mhm.
you're in a hospital, and they suggest you have nursing home or help.
Yeah.
So you go into a nursing home, and that's paid for.
Nursing home?
Yeah. If you go straight from, this is what I've been told.
Right.
I need this. I need to know more about
It's
this.
confusing, yeah.
It'll be paid for by your, by
Medicare.
By Medicare. If you're in the hospital for 3 months and then you are sent home or sent to a facility,
Right.
it's paid for by Medicare.
So nursing home care, yes, mostly. There is a time limit. Like there is a certain number of days, and then you are,
90 days, I think.
is that what it is?
Yes.
Yeah, don't quote me. And then you're discharged, and they might say, well, you can't stay here, but you need to go home with services. And we get referrals from nursing homes that say you need to go home with,
So why would the nursing home say you can't stay here?
because either you can't pay for it or you've used up all your days. You know what I mean? Like, there becomes a point where you do have to pay for nursing home care. Medicare will only cover so much. I don't want to say, I have no idea what the days are. I don't want to say it wrong. But there is a certain amount of days that it covers, and then it starts coming out of pocket. So at that point, then they would start using your money, eventually your assets if you need it, and you'd eventually work your way down to Medicaid essentially, and then you would put in a mass health application at that point.
So at that point, you would decide whether you want homestead or home care.
That doesn't make sense.
Right. What doesn't make sense?
Then you go to this kind of thing from a nursing home, because a nursing home covers a lot of care, whereas,
I guess I was thinking of, more short-term rehab, maybe. That's when it's more appropriate. When you're in a nursing home, you're probably not gonna go home.
No.
Yeah, but we might have caregivers come into the nursing home to provide additional care, because there's also a certain...
Really?
Oh, yeah. There's also a certain number of hours you get of care in a nursing home, and it might not, depending on the individual, it might not be enough. Or maybe the family wants a caregiver in there doing an end-of-life scrapbook with somebody and like memories to carry
Well,
on.
those are extras.
Yeah, but we have caregivers in nursing homes all the time. But you are right, sorry, that you will go home after short-term rehab, and that's when they call us. But if you're in a nursing home,
Yeah.
we'll probably send the caregiver, we will send the caregiver there.
Yeah, I went through it with my husband.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not fun stuff. No, I'm sorry.
It's been a while, so I'm a little, don't remember everything either.
Yeah. I encourage you, if you're alone and planning for yourself, I encourage you to talk, if you have children or someone you trust, tell them what you want for your plan. Before you forget, because we're all going to forget eventually,
So what would a nursing home, at that point in your life, that you have to decide whether to go to a nursing home or whether to have home care? That's the question, right? What don't you get from home care that you would get in a nursing home that you might need?
you're going to get more skilled care, like nursing services in a nursing home. Whereas we don't have, our nurses oversee the caregivers, but we cannot, insert an IV. We cannot fill your prescription pill bottles. We physically cannot fill those there's a law. We cannot put your medication in there. If it's done by a family member, we can help you take it, but we cannot put the pills into those little Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday things. So nursing care, like I said, if you have a wound or IVs, that's something a nursing home would do that we cannot. We can assist with it, we can change bags, change tanks if you're on oxygen and stuff, but there's a little higher level of It's a fine line. There's a high level of care in a nursing home. But because it's more skill focused, it's not necessarily relationship based in the nursing home. That's why you'll find our caregivers going into the nursing home just to be there for conversation or like to reminisce about memories, or the relationship piece sometimes gets lost just because in a nursing home they're so focused on medically making sure you're okay that they forget about the psychosocial part of you. Like, what do you want to process before you pass? What do you want to talk about? What do you want to tell your kids, your grand, you know what I mean? So that part our caregivers can do. Any other questions? Feel free to ask.
So if the caregiver goes on vacation,
Yeah.
is there another person that steps in, or you just go that service?
Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah. See you, bye. No, yeah. We're actually planning July 4th. I'm going to Michigan actually next week. But a lot of our staff, a lot of our caregivers take the 4th of July for whatever reason off, so our staff are busy filling shifts right now with a replacement caregiver for vacations, but for whatever reason it's a big vacation week. But yeah, you will always have a caregiver still.
I'm in California.
Yeah, everyone leaves the 4th of
I
July.
have a wedding.
Do you? Yeah. So I go to Michigan every 4th of July. What other questions? Ask them now. Like, I'm happy to. What else is scary you don't know? Plan ahead and tell your children, like, say, I went to this, like, ask these questions. You don't have to go with home instead, that's fine, but just say, like, let your children or your spouse know, so somebody knows what you want. Whoever it is that's overseeing your care. If it's just you, find somebody, like, reach out to someone at the Council on Aging and say, you know, Suzanne, I'm home alone, and, like, I want home instead in the home when it's time. Like, tell somebody before it's too late. Advocate for yourself. Tell your primary care physician, I want home instead, or I want Jennifer's home care, whatever you want. But make sure you plan ahead. It's like, yeah, just plan ahead. It's kind of like going off to college. Like, how do I want the last few years of my life to be? Do I want them to be in a nursing home, at home care? But make it known.
Most of the caregivers women, or you have any men?
We do have men, not as many as we'd like. We're always looking for more men. But we do have both. Yeah. We would always like more men.
Somewhere, sometime, I heard that Medicare will pay for some home care. Like family members, they will pay family members for taking care of something.
Correct, yes, you are right. There is a certain dollar amount. I think it's like $1,500, $2,000. I don't know if it's the state of Massachusetts or federally, but if you are a family, like say I was living with my mom, and yeah, the state, and I was her primary caregiver, I can get reimbursed. I'm not sure if on my taxes or how, but if I'm her primary caregiver, I can get a couple $1,000s a year. Yeah, correct. It's state level funding, yeah. But if you could probably go to mass.gov and search.
But that was just only in effect 5 years ago?
Did it? Really? Yeah, I think it's a couple $1,000 a year is what I saw.
And you're usually the main caregiver for that person.
What other questions? Just plan it. Plan for yourselves, plan for your friends, you know, plan for your spouses. So it's not scary and you don't know. I think for me, a peace of mind knowing what I want makes things go more smoothly. Like my grandma wanted to die at her house. We tried as hard as we could to make that happen, but she knew she wanted to go to this assisted living because her friend's there. Her friend is still there with her, so just think about where are your friends going? Where are people you know? Just plan it.
Do you have any idea of the difference between the cost of a nursing home and assisted living?
Nursing home right now is running, it's gonna be a range, but I would say anywhere from like $375 to like $500 a day. Yeah, yeah. Depending where you go, you know, the affluency of the town, but it's expensive. Assisted living can range anywhere from $3,000 up to $7,000, depending on how fancy it is and how many services they have. But $3,000 a month, sorry. The $3,000 to $7,000 a month right now.
Yeah.
Wasn't that for memory unit?
Probably more, yeah. Probably 5,000 to 9,000 for memory care.
You know,
Huh?
the new
Yeah.
Year.
assisted living in Sudbury is
Nursing.
over 9,000.
Is that the Bridges by Epic?
Yes.
It's over 9,000.
So
Yeah.
I'm sure it's up to 90.
Is it really? Yeah, I'm going, maybe tomorrow actually go see it. I think there's an event, a food truck festival tomorrow. I'm gonna go see what it looks like. Oh my gosh. It's expensive. I mean, home care tends to be the cheapest option.
Living first.
But if you take the home care, I just did a quick calculation.
Yeah.
And I got to, with some discount, $600 a day for 24/7. If you say.
For home care?
If I say about $25, a little less than $25 an hour for home instead, for 24 hours, that gets up to about 600.
Is that, you sure? I don't
I
think it's that
I
much.
could have done it wrong, I don't know, let me try again then.
Do 27 or 29 times 24, yeah.
And you know, I was just, so if you say $25 times 24,
Yeah, it is a little,
that gets to be $600.
is it really, for 24/7?
Yeah, so if you say that times, let's say 30 days, then up to
They
$18,000
live
per month.
with you.
Yeah.
But that's.
That's 24/7.
And there's a difference.
Yes,
Most
absolutely.
people wouldn't do that.
Put in the
Yeah.
hours.
Yeah.
Not everybody
but-
needs that. It's typically towards maybe the end of life or if they have a terminal illness, yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. No, I was just,
But yeah,
it's nice to know the
Yes.
numbers up front.
it's
And yes, it's
expensive.
expensive.
It is. Who thought planning to die was so, I know.
It
Makes me nervous. It's like all I think about. I gotta save money now so I can die. It's awful, but it is a lot of money. I know.
Yep.
Unless you get to the point where, you know, you're spending down your assets and you have a mass health application going through. I mean, it's gonna, your care might be different than it would be if you went with a private agency, but
Here,
hopefully your children might be able to help or something.
day.
Then you need to be in a nursing home.
Do you have, what was your question?
No, we're discussing comparing the costs.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Now, if you do need someone like you
Yeah.
for 3 sessions, right? 3 8-hour sessions.
Yeah, yeah.
Compared to assisted living, you might as well go into assisted living. What's the comparison?
Yeah, I mean, if you're needing 24/7, that's
Yeah.
that's a caregiver by your side 24/7. You
Yeah,
won't get that
so-
at assisted living. Assisted living, you only get 1 to 2 hours of face-to-face contact with a caregiver. Do you see the
Yeah, but
difference?
they're there all the
Right, yeah,
time.
exactly.
So if there's emergency or even to help.
But they do
go
start
to the
charging you.
bathroom, say,
They do
I'm so
charge you.
surprised.
You
They
get a
charge-
base of like 1 to 2 hours, and then if you find you're needing, they will charge you all those hours, or they'll recommend us. They'll say, this person needs more than 2 hours of care, can we call you in? So assisted living comes with the protection of knowing there's people around and can keep an eye on you, but you only get 1 to 2 hours of care with the $7,000, $5,000 a month. Yeah,
I had a friend that was in assisted living, and they charged her for giving her medicine.
yeah, they nickel.
Oh, yeah.
It's all the little
ridiculous.
things.
Yeah.
They don't, sometimes they tell you that, sometimes they don't, hopefully they will, but yeah, there's a whole itemized list of like,
I remember that.
and they'll call, like I said, they will call us, we're in assisted livings all the time too, if this person's declining, and yeah, we'll do 24/7 care in an assisted living, because they only get 2 hours of care there.
Jennifer, I heard
Yeah.
a story about some man was living in assisted living and he had there was a lady in the next room with whom he was traveling. She told him in the morning they charged $10 to put on her socks because she couldn't do it herself. And in the evening they charged another $10 to remove the socks.
Take them off? Really? Oh.
This was in Framingham.
Out of assisted living? Oh, wow, I didn't hear that. Yeah, that's why I say ask the questions. Like, sure, it's $6,000 a month, but how much care? Are you gonna charge me for laundry? Are you gonna charge me for helping with my medications? Yes, the answer is yes. Most assisted livings come with a max of 2 hours of care. Some only come with 1 hour or an hour and a half.
And what does that care include, that 2 hours, say? What would you get for that 2 hours?
Probably, I would think something like, it should be like putting on your clothes in the morning. Like if that takes an hour, which washing, bathing you, it does take a while as you age. It will take a full hour.
Sure.
But if you now need someone to help you into bed at night, they're going to come charge you for that additional hour. I know, it's scary. Huh?
Depends on the individual, what they need.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does. So stay active and mobile as long as possible. Yeah, but you won't get anything more than 2 hours of care in assisted living with whatever's included. Everything else will be additional. Which is good. I mean, it's a nice place and there's eyes on you in an emergency, but they'll charge you for the emergency. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, huh?
Then you charge for the ambulance ride.
Yeah. I know, I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news.
Okay, so if that happens, I go home to Denmark, everything is paid for.
What'd you say?
If that happens, I go home to Denmark, where I come from, and everything is paid for.
Is it? Probably, yeah.
Yep,
I'm
and
sure.
you get a single room, which is basically an apartment.
Really? And it's all
If you can't
covered
pay for
by,
it, it's free, if you can pay for it, you pay.
is it covered by taxes or
Yeah.
like? Yeah, see, we've got it kind of backwards here.
National
I know.
Health Service.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Canada, Sweden, they actually care about the health care of their people. Yeah. Here it's all about
Yeah, but
business.
they pay for it, you pay for it in
Yes,
taxes.
oh, yes, you do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's a little bit of a peace of mind that you
Yeah.
don't have to
It is
think and
peace of
plan for
mind.
this.
Yeah, I've seen family members go in. My mother-in-law was the last one with dementia. She came in, she basically got an apartment, and everybody was looking after. It was a facility meant for people with dementia.
Yeah,
So you could go outside,
yeah.
but you couldn't get outside the garden.
I've seen videos of those, yeah.
Everything, it was perfect.
And they have like a mall, they have a whole community created, like a mall. It looks like a normal town, but it's secure.
It was just perfect.
Yeah, I've
She
seen the
could even
videos.
get her glass of wine with dinner.
Yeah,
You know, whatever matters to you, and
Right.
that mattered to her.
right.
So,
Yeah, for me, I want to die either in my grandma's, like at my house if I can, or in the cabin on the lake. But
oh,
to each their own. Yeah, I mean, it depends. If you want assisted, great.
Okay.
I know. Sorry.
okay, I probably shouldn't.
I feel like I've just destroyed all of your hopes and dreams.
No,
It's pricey, so talk with your relatives. Plan this out. Plan it out.
We do.
You do, yeah. Give them information. Oh no, I feel like I just ruined everyone's day. But it's good to be educated.
It's good to have the information, it's good to know upfront what you're.
Plan ahead, whatever you do, folks, that's the message, whatever you want. Think about it now.
Right, yeah, while you're still capable.
Accordingly,
Yeah.
yes.
Work with someone else who's still capable and remember this.